Well, hello there. Do hope you're all well. Now, I remember not long after the referendum result, on social media, I came across this scientist for the EU, and that's how I first got to know about Dr. Mike Galsworthy. And over the last few years since the shenanigans about what type of Brexit deal we're going to get, I've seen a few of his videos where he's chipping in, having his opinion on things, and you can tell quite clearly he's an intelligent bloke. So anyway, on Sunday I was listening to the usual Nick Abbot on Sunday night, and I heard that apparently he was having an interview with Dr. Mike Galsworthy, and my ears pricked up, and I thought, I'm going to have a listen to this. So I thought, well, I will share it with you, because I found it truly fascinating. So enjoy.
Well, the EU today doubled down on its threats to block COVID vaccine exports to the UK. The President of the European Commission raised the stakes in the so-called vaccine war with a new warning to Britain that Brussels could prevent AstraZeneca from exporting jabs. It's all getting a bit... Hang on. Excuse me, it's all getting a bit heated. I'm joined now by Dr. Mike Galsworthy, who is the founder of Scientists for EU and also the director of March for Change, which is a campaigning group supporting Parliament's all-party group on coronavirus. Dr. Galsworthy, is this turning into a diplomatic war now?
I really hope not. I mean, we're at such an early stage of the whole global rollout, which will go until 2023. It seems a bit early for everyone to be getting their selves in a twist so early. It's quite exhausting already. So I hope we can find ways to step it down and do what we all need to do, which is collaborate and make sure that we get everyone covered so that everyone is safe.
Tell us why it is that we appear to be, if not a war, then let's use a slightly more benign term.
Conflict, shall we say?
Well, how about a more benign one than that? How about race? Right. How is it that this country is, in the face of all of the failings that we've had on every marker to this point, how are we winning this particular race so comprehensively?
A few factors. Firstly, in terms of supply, we are drawing our own supply nationally, but also drawing from the EU in a ratio of about 2 to 1. Then, in terms of organising our supply chains, we did that comprehensively very early on, so credit to the government on that they spotted that. And then our NHS has been very effective as well. But it should also be noted that in terms of the contracts that we signed with AstraZeneca, whereas the EU had, which signed actually a contract a day earlier, basically couched it in best efforts and generally had an open view on both getting supplies for themselves and the world being supplied, the UK actually had written into the contract that the UK gets supplied first from UK manufacturing before anyone else gets supplies. And then that knocks onto problems later on. But overall, viewing it from, the purely selfish angle of us supplying ourselves and then getting it out through our systems into people's arms and also the public accepting vaccinations, we just have done a very strong job there. The US has as well, incidentally. Australia and New Zealand are just starting. Canada is far behind us. And there's many places across South America and Africa that will be last to get the kind of coverage that we need to get.
Now, Ursula...
So I guess to put it overall in terms of rankings, you've got Israel first, then you've got the States and the UK and a few Arab countries. Then you've got broadly the EU, and then you've got some other countries around Europe and other random places, and then the rest of the world after that.
Right, so we are on the silver medal podium at the moment, which is rather crowded because the United States is along there at our side. Now, you mentioned that we are getting 2 vaccines that we produce in this country and 1 in the European Union. So each
we've
batch
given ourselves about 26 million jabs, of which about 10 million have come from the EU.
And how
most
many
of those being Pfizer?
And how many of our jabs, given that the EU have sent us 10 million, how many have we sent the EU?
Oh, zilch. We've sent nobody anything worth anything. So we haven't been exporting because, we produce AstraZeneca and we've got a lock on that on ourselves. So, yes, 0 out to the EU or anywhere else.
So it sounds, just based on that the European Union have a justifiable gripe with us.
Yeah, and they've also got a gripe with the US as well, because the US have also exported zilch. And in fact, to give our government credit, one of the reasons why we paired up Oxford with AstraZeneca was because originally it was Merck, the US Merck, that was going to do the deal with Oxford. And we said, we think that Donald Trump is probably likely to stop production in the US, and that's where all the Merck production is, and we can't have that, so we'll go for a company that also produces on British soil. But yeah, true to form, that's what Donald Trump did, and that's what Biden has continued. So if you're thinking about the world's supply, then in terms of finished vaccines being put out, it's US 0, UK 0, and EU 41 million. So the EU has been providing for Canada, because we're not doing that, even though it's part of the Commonwealth. The US isn't doing that, even though it's neighbour. Similarly with Mexico. Mexico has been begging the US twice over, can we have some of your supplies? Can we even have your AstraZeneca, they said, because we know you've got 30 million doses and you're not using it because you haven't approved it yet. So the US hasn't approved AstraZeneca. US says no. And so what about, for example, Hong Kong? The EU again. What about Japan? The EU again. So the EU has provided 41 million doses to about 33 different countries, and they're looking at the UK and the US and thinking, what's going on, guys? Because you're bragging about how well you're doing for yourselves, but we're carrying the can for the rest of the world. And it should be a team effort.
This is a bit confusing to me. Can you explain why it is, if the European Union is in want of vaccines, that they're sending them anywhere? Why can't countries keep the ones that they're making and use them themselves, rather than send them elsewhere and then say that they don't have enough?
Well, they could, but that would be vaccine nationalism, which is what they've been trying to avoid. Because they know they've got a manufacturing base, they haven't wanted to get in the way of that and play the vaccine nationalist. Now, Donald Trump did straight off the bat and had the U.S. Defense Procurement Act, just as, we all feared, to make sure that anything was being put out in the States was just immediately seized and couldn't get out. And the UK wrote it into our contract with AstraZeneca, our only supplier. But the EU, you could say that they've been good-hearted, or you can say they've been naive, but essentially they found themselves caught short, not just because, they've allowed all the production within the EU also to be, bought for vaccines by other countries, but also they were given certain promises by AstraZeneca in terms of how many vaccines they could get. And they thought that was going to be good because they saw that it started off well in the UK. And then suddenly AstraZeneca is saying, sorry, it's not 90 million, it's 30 million. And they're like, what? That's hugely short. Well, hold sec. How far short is the UK? Oh, we're not telling you that. But they look like they're getting a good supply. What's going on here? Surely UK manufacturing, which is clearly tip-top and running over well, surely we can have some of that. And that's when it came out, no, sorry, because even though we said we'd supply you from everywhere, we can't supply you from the UK because we just signed a contract with the UK saying UK first.
And now we are told that the next month or so in the UK, the rollout is going to slow down significantly. What's India's role in that?
Right, well, India has now joined the vaccine nationalism game and decided that it's not going to ship out supplies that it would rather keep for itself in order to take care of its own population. So it hasn't outright been called as that, but that's what's starting to happen. And as that does happen, then of course it makes it more tempting for the EU to get in on the game and say, well, if no one else is behaving well and, our rollout has been slow and we're not getting the numbers supplied that we expected, well, maybe we should do that as well. And so we're getting ourselves into a very difficult situation all round, and it's actually going to take some good level thinking at the international level to sort this. For me, I think that the beef between the EU and the UK has gone too deep now, that it's not going to get easily resolved there. I think the way that this is going to get resolved, if people have their smarts about them, is that the EU talks to Biden, and then Biden says, okay, now that the US is largely providing for itself, we will start exporting to our neighbours in Canada and Mexico. I think they're already going to do that soon. And as we do that, we want to say thank you to the EU for carrying it so far and providing all that supply. And now that we're stepping out to the plate as well, you're not going to be so strained in terms of your export going out. And that in turn will mean that the EU then doesn't have to snatch things back from the UK, where the UK is already waiting on those vaccines. That's why the UK is angry. They've got well-laid plans as to how we get our population covered. And if that suddenly gets taken away by India and then the EU, that puts us in dire trouble. So that, for me, would be the way to break it. And then when we can get past that, it's going to be upon the US, the UK, and the EU together, once we've covered ourselves, to take care of the rest of the world, because if we don't, we will see new variants cooked up in Africa or South America that will come back to bite us. But it will take those three key entities that are ahead of the game, the US, the EU, and the UK, to get together, sort it out, and then make sure that they sort out the rest of the world.
But, people might think, I know you just touched on it in passing at the end there, but people might think, well, what difference does it make? We're getting our vaccines. We're going to be completely safe. Who cares if the rest of the world is fighting over theirs? As long as we've got ours, what could possibly go wrong? Well, what could possibly go wrong?
Well, we've already seen what could possibly go wrong a few times with the Kent variant and the Brazilian variant and the South African variant. The South African variant, well, let's start with the Kent variant, because the reason why you saw that horrendous flare-up over Christmas and then January, and in January we had 30,000 deaths, I believe. That was partly because this government absolutely screwed up on locking down in the autumn and then again over Christmas, and, it didn't have a test and trace system. But also, that Kent variant's a nasty one, and that changes all the calculations, and that's what Europe is struggling with now. But even worse than the Kent variant is the South African variant, because that is also more resistant to vaccines. So that South African variant is finding its way into Europe and into the UK in little bits and pieces, and if that flares up, then we've got a problem. But the worst thing that could happen is that as we're trying to roll out the vaccine globally, then somehow, somewhere else in the rest of the world, where the vast majority of the population is, there gets a new variant cooked up, which will quite happily rip through anyone who's already been vaccinated, because, our antibodies don't recognize it. And, that's the thing that we want to avoid. And the way you avoid it is by making sure that you're helping the other countries vaccinate in order to reduce that gene pool by which the virus can experiment. But also globally, what we're really going to need is a superb monitoring system of where all the different strains are, and that's going to require some of the great genomics that we do in the UK, but also pairing that up with the States and Europe and all of the other developed countries that pitch into that. Because this virus, it's a tough one and it's a nasty one, not just in terms of deaths, but also in terms of the long-term damage it can do with long COVID. And that is really going to hobble a lot of our populations until we work globally to really, really get on top of it. And we are, still at early stages of the battle, halfway through at best.
Okay, Mike, thank you for that. That's Dr. Mike Galsworthy, who is the founder of Scientists for EU and the director of March for Change, a campaign group supporting Parliament's all-party group on coronavirus. Well, I bet that that's the first time you've heard that side of the argument, because the right-wing press are telling us with wearying predictability that we are winning the war. Always with this Second World War terminology, constantly fighting that conflagration. But we appear to be winning the war because we're not playing fair. It's as though this country has barged into Eaton's tuck shop, stripped the shelves clean of sweets, and is laughing at the kids who've come in afterwards and seen that the cupboard is bare. 0345 6060 973, text 84850, email nick@lbc.co.uk, and if you're on Twitter, it's @LBC. Friday, Saturday, Sunday night at 10, Nick Abbot, LBC.
I don't know about you, but I found the interview incredibly fascinating. I could listen to Mike Galsworthy all night, if I'm honest, because I find his insights incredibly intelligent and rational. And Nick's right, you won't hear anything about this in the right-wing media at all. And his Eton analogy, I think it's pretty spot on as well. But what do you guys think? Anyway, I'm not going to take too much of your time now, because I think the video's gone on long enough. So I shall bid you farewell until the next time. Take care.